Hello everybody, GGC Anime here, and today we're here to review the Misfit of Demon King Academy Season 2. So without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So, what is the story for the start of Season 2? Basically, after things look like they're finally starting to calm down with everything with Anos and friends, it's then revealed that the gods, who kinda got mad at Anos a while back, are now here in the present talking about how they've created a child of God to come and slay Anos, and thus he's trying to find a way to deal with all of this that's now going down, and a bunch of other stuff happens. Some new people show up. A lot of intrigue is created trying to give you an idea of, who could be this mysterious killer? Could it be someone new? Or maybe someone Anos already knows? And that is where we start things off. And yeah, that probably wasn't a great description, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts for this season, it was fine. I guess you could best say it was fine. It wasn't anything super particularly special. Like, there was a lot of times while I was watching where I was just like, wait, how did that happen? Wait, when did this come into play? What was this a thing? And, well, season 1 kind of had those moments too. They kind of balanced them out since they only really included moments like those every now and then, where most of the time they would give you explanations to everything that was going down. So while you were watching, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But in this season in particular, they loved bringing in a lot of things that just feel so out of nowhere, which what those things are, I'll get more into in the spoiler section. But there are just so many moments in this season where I'm just like, wait, why is that happening? Wait, what did that come into play? And there are also times where I was kind of bored. There were actually several moments that I was bored, and there were just a lot of problems I had with this season, because compared to the first one, which was just a fun kind of like fantasy One Punch Man type show, this felt kind of like what if One Punch Man Season 2 was what they were trying to handle, which may sound ridiculous, but that's kind of like how I felt while I was watching, because it just felt like it just lacked in a lot of areas, and it might even kind of be weaker than One Punch Man Season 2, and I'll go more into that in the spoiler section, but just everything in this season felt way more lackluster. Characters just suddenly had these magical powers that we didn't know they had before, because they just have them now. There are several moments where Anos is trying to do this or that, and I just think, wait, why is he doing that? Why doesn't he just take care of this right now? Why is he dragging this out? And there are so many things I have to complain about more than I have positives to say, and it's just rough, because I do like the Misfit of Demon King Academy series. I really enjoyed the first season, and I'll probably end up watching Season 2's second part when it airs. But I wasn't a big fan of this season. I felt like it was lacking in a lot of areas. There were several animation moments that made me question things. Like, there's some CGI in this season that is really freaking bad. But I wanted to like it. That's the sad part. I really wanted to like this. In fact, I thought maybe after the abysmal stuff that was episode 4, like that is one of the worst episodes of Misfit, I thought maybe after that things would start getting better, since episode 5 and 6 were actually quite enjoyable. But then you get to episode 7 and onward, and it's just like, okay, because if you've been through the anime scene, you know that episodes 7 to 12 were delayed several months, which is why I ended up stopping my viewing of it and ended up waiting until the whole thing was done airing, and thus I finally got to sit down and watch it. But basically this whole season just wasn't as interesting, since I thought maybe it was picking it back up with episodes 5 and 6, but then the rest of the season happened and it was just fine. They were nothing more than fine, and it just leads me to complain more than give positive stuff, because I just didn't really care for it that much. I didn't think the characters were super intriguing. I didn't think the story overall really had too many good moments. There were a few solid episodes here and there, but I'd be lying if I said I really enjoyed this. More often than not, I was actually more bored. In fact, I don't think there were many times while I was watching the season that I thought, yes, this is so freaking good. More often I just thought, is the episode over yet? Oh no, there's still 12 minutes left. What the heck, man? And it just sometimes felt like a slog to get through. Sometimes it just felt just so annoying. Sometimes it just wasn't working, but yeah. I can't really talk about much else without spoiling anything, so we're just going to hop into the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I'd recommend sticking around and hearing my thoughts, but if you haven't, just get to the end so you don't get any spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, I'd recommend sticking around and hearing my thoughts. So yeah, I'm going to count from 5, and I'm going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the biggest thing on the table I want to discuss here today with this season is how it kind of mismanages Anos. I mentioned how it kind of was comparable to One Punch Man Season 2, not in a lot of ways, because they definitely have their differences, but there's one thing that both of these stories of these seasons struggle with, and that is their main character's real involvement in the story. like in One Punch Man Season 2, where Saitama doesn't really do too much stuff, in this, Anos is just kind of there. In fact, in the finale, where Lei is going up against Avos del Hevia, which Avos del Hevia is back for some reason, and when he's going up against this new version of Avos del Hevia, all of a sudden Anos is just like, all right, you do that. I'm gonna watch my old subordinate Shin go and fight this god. I'm just gonna stand here on the side and wait for things to happen. You guys do you. And he actually does a lot more just standing around than anything in this season. More often than not, he's not doing anything. He's just there. He just kind of chills out. And the sad part is, that's not what happens every time. There are occasions in the story where Anos does get a good moment. Like, in a later episode, after Anos, once Avos comes back, he decides to go back to the past to figure out what's going on, why Avos is back. And when he does that, he ends up changing some things in the past, which was weird because he said he couldn't do that, but all of a sudden he can, which I'm guessing they're just like, oh yeah, cool, he can change time a bit now, but I don't know, it's a bit confusing. But it's just, he only has like this one really solid moment in the past where he's reflecting on everything that happens after the war and after he finally sacrifices himself, which is a really actually solid episode, really good episode. But there's very few moments of that where Anos is showing just how different he is from the other characters and how he may not always understand everything. Because most of the season, he's just kind of on the sidelines. The most he does is in the first few episodes where he ends up stopping some tree from causing problems for his group because, well, the tree is also really ugly due to its CGI looking terrible. But leaving that be, there's this whole thing where his team is up against another team who were his subordinates or something, but they're evil now because that's not a repetitive formula they've been doing time and time again. And he ends up using some kind of thing to make it so that way none of his teammates fail. And those are some kind of the cool moments with Anos. I do think there's some really cool moments in there. However, most of the time, Anos isn't doing anything. In the first few episodes, he does some stuff, but then after that, he's just pretty much just watching. Even when his team travels to the past in order to figure out what was going on and why Avos del Hevia is back, he just kind of stands there for the most part. Minus the episode I talked about, he just stands there. He's just there. He doesn't do anything. He's just watching everything unfold. And even in the finale, where all of his subordinates are out doing stuff, he's still just watching for the most part. He doesn't really do anything massive until the final episode. And that is one of the biggest problems I have with this season, because Anos is what made Misfit of Demon King Academy so entertaining. Like, him being overpowered, being able to easily destroy any of his enemies and just do whatever he wants, that was fun. Watching Anos do all this stuff was entertaining, and they would just build plots around his abilities, and that's what made the show so good in the first season. However, in the second season, because he's not really too much of a main leader in what's going down, it's more focused on Shin and his romance with the Great Fairy Mother. It's just, the whole thing just feels like Anos really doesn't have a role. And the only time he really feels like he's gonna really do anything massive is at the end of the whole thing where he takes on Avos del Hevia, and as well as tease that, for some reason, some of my memory is missing. And he kind of teases what might be coming up in the second part. And I don't know, Anos really was a disappointment this season. The only thing I can really give credit to him is the fact that his new voice actor who plays him in this season is actually pretty solid overall. He does a pretty solid job representing Anos' character, and while he may lack some of the authority that the original voice had, I think he did a pretty solid job overall. But other than that, Anos is just not that great this season, and I kind of wish he got more screen time, since this is literally called The Misfit of Demon King Academy. This is about him. The fact that he doesn't play a major role in this season just made him feel like he wasn't the main character anymore, and that just felt like a big problem for me personally, since I really enjoy Anos. I think he's a hilarious main character, and just seeing him do all these epic things, it's entertaining. It was fun to watch in the first season, so the fact that the second season dropped the ball so hard with him is really sad. And he's not really the only problem I suffer through with this season, since there are a lot of moments this season where things just kind of come out of nowhere. I mentioned this during the spoiler-free section, where there are moments where things would just come out of nowhere, just on the dime, just on the spot. Like, in the battle between Lei and the Spirit King, which we don't know much about yet. Like, we don't know his identity. During that battle, it seems like Lei might be losing, but then all of a sudden, Misa comes out of nowhere and it's just like, oh yeah, I have fairy powers. I know we mentioned before that I am a fairy, or a half fairy, half demon, but now I have fairy powers because I know how to use these. These were definitely brought up at some point in time, and I definitely showed that I was able to know how to use these. This definitely just did not come out of flippin' nowhere, and oh Lord. Not only that, but then there's the whole thing about lay in her power of love, which is less stupid, but actually it is pretty stupid, but it's also just kind of cringeworthy as well. It's just, that was kind of dumb. And the whole reveal of Misa also being Avo still Hevia through spirit form was pretty dumb, since I'm gonna be honest here, the return of Avo still Hevia should have taken longer to do. They should have had another villain be the focus here, in my personal opinion. I don't hate the idea of Avo still Hevia coming back, but the fact that we just wrapped up that storyline in season 1, the fact that we're already back at it in season 2 really got on my nerves, because I was just thinking, this is such a waste of a storyline, bringing this in too early. It's like, the story's already done. Why are you still going with this Avo still Hevia stuff? And it's not only that, why is it that even though Anos has all of these minions, how are they so easily brainwashed? Like, this is the second time in storylines that we have the brainwashed side character minions of Anos. And it's just like, dude, you're telling me that Anos still hasn't found a way to protect them from mind control? Why are they still so easily mind controlled? Tell me, why? Why is that such a common theme with them? They might as well just stay dead if they can't seem to get past brainwashing. It's just, man, there's so many complaints I have with this season, especially with how, because we're not focusing on Anos this season, instead we're focusing on Shin, as well as Lino, who are the great mother spirit fairy thing, with their whole story and what went down with them. And that, weirdly enough, is one of the better parts of this season. However, the fact that that's the only real major part of the season kind of also ruins it, as during the final episodes, the god who is trying to kill Anos with this child he created that is now known as Avo still Hevia, when he created that child, I thought, okay, now that that child's off fighting Lei, that means Anos is gonna come and fight this guy and teach him a lesson about messing with life, or something like that. But then no, then Shin comes over and is just like, I can finally avenge my dead wife. And the whole episode's just him, not the whole episode, but some of the episode, like the first half, is just him fighting this god, and I just think, where's Anos during all of this? That's just basically the fact that Anos is just standing on the side doing nothing. Anos is just over there doing nothing. And it's just, I don't like it. I didn't like how little Anos played a part in all of this. It's just, why? Why, man? I just don't like it that much. And then there's some other stuff that goes down that really doesn't involve our main characters that much. And I just wish that this was slightly better in a lot of ways. I just really wish that we had more focus on other characters besides this whole plotline with Shin and Lino, who just kind of do their own thing. They're just there, and we're watching how their love story slowly falls apart in a very generic way of actually this tragic ending to their story. And I don't know, just everything about this season upset me. I was angry a few times, not all the time, but a few times. And more often than not, if I had to describe my feelings while watching this, I was bored, and I felt like the story was really lacking in intrigue. I just felt like there wasn't really much here for me to get invested in. And by the time we reached the ending of the story, I was just thinking, okay, well, that was that thing. And I think the saddest part of all of this has got to be that I was more interested in the last episode's post-credit scene than I was pretty much the entire season. Like, does that say how bored I was? Like, there's this little teaser at the end where Anos is like, wait a minute, where are some of my memories? I can't seem to remember them all. And I think, oh, that's really intriguing. Then they cut to this shot of him walking up some stairs, approaching some weird thing, and or some weird person. And I just like, wow, this could actually be really interesting. And then I realized, wait a minute, why am I more interested in this than I am the entire rest of the season? And there's just so many negatives to go into with this season that I can barely think of any real positives. And the sad part is, even though I'm saying that there's a lot of negatives, I thought it was okay. I genuinely thought it was okay. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it wasn't fun. It was just middle of the road, okay. Boring, predictable at times, and really dull, but it was okay. And I hate that because I want to say, oh, this was terrible, it was awful, I hated it, but I can't even say that because I didn't hate it. I just thought it was fine. Oh, Lord. If I had to go into one positive, though, I guess, moving from all that for now, one positive I do have to give this is that I do appreciate how some of the previous negative people in Anos' life started to have a more positive turn, as there's this one teacher named Elizabeth who, in the first season, yeah, absolutely hate her. She's just the worst person ever, but in this season, after going through a few things that she herself did to others, she's starting to learn more about things, and she's grown as a character. There's also this other character who really hated Anos and didn't want to acknowledge him as the Demon King, but then after that, he does acknowledge him. These are all things from season 1 that I really liked the callbacks to, and I thought, oh, those are actually cool things. And those were some of the few episodes where I thought, okay, this is actually pretty solid. I like this. But the sad part is, out of this 12 episode season, there was only like 2 or 3 good episodes. The rest of the season was either boring, sucked, or didn't make sense. Since this all just really stemmed straight from episode 4, which is why I want to talk about that one the most right now. And that is the fact that episode 4 is the worst episode of Misfit of Demon King Academy. Before I said it was one of the worst, but it really is the worst. Because there's so many fast-paced moments where in the beginning, the first 10 minutes, it doesn't feel too bad. It feels fine. It doesn't feel amazing, but not terrible. You kind of understand where things are going. But then all of a sudden, in the second half, a bunch of things get thrown at you at once, and then the ending just kind of kicks in, where Avostil Hevia, after Misa is stabbed, now she's Avostil Hevia, and I just think, where did this come from? What is this? And they barely explain it. They go over the details of, since she's the other half of Misa, she's been there the whole time. Why? Why was she there the whole time? I thought that wasn't the case, but I guess it is. It's just, oh Lord, episode 4 was such a mess that I'm reminded when I rewatched it to fully do this review, how much I hated that episode. It genuinely got me mad. And then there was episode 11, which I also really hated because it's the one I mentioned where Anos kind of steps off to the side where other people fight and he feels completely unnecessary to the plot. And even in the final battle, where he goes against Avostil Hevia, she doesn't even really let him do anything. Because after Lei, for some reason, can magically slice her and Misa in 2 now and separate them, which I didn't know he could do that. Apparently he could do that now. After he could do that, then Avostil Hevia is like, oh man, I'm gonna destroy you, Honest Voltagood. And then it just stabs herself with the sword. And then after that, she's just dead because she apparently was using her own body to create a spell or something to kill everybody. And all I could think was, why? That felt like such an underwhelming end to her character. We didn't even get to see Anos defeat her. She just died. And it just didn't feel impactful. Everything just felt so empty and uninteresting and just... I hated this season on a lot of levels, which is why I'm so angry that I thought it was okay at the end. But yeah, overall, this season's lacking in a lot of ways. The CGI, especially on those tree things, those tree spirits, is horrendous. Like, genuinely some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. But in the end, it wasn't the worst thing ever I've seen, but I just didn't like it that much. I thought it was pretty empty and it lacked, compared to season 1, I felt like it was uninteresting. It lacked anything to really get me into it, and I genuinely wish that I could have watched something else because this was not it. I really hope that part 2 of this season when it airs is a lot better, but this half was not it. It just wasn't. And yeah. That's all we have to say, so we're at the conclusion of this video. What are my final thoughts? This season overall isn't the best, but it's fine. I have a lot of things I don't like about it, but at the same time, I struggle to really hate it. It just doesn't really feel like much. It has predictable plot threads. It doesn't really give me too much to think, yes, this is definitely more Misfit. It just felt like it was nothing. It was just stuff that was happening. Overall, most of it just dropped the ball, and I didn't like it that much. So yeah, a part of me really wishes there could have been more there for me to enjoy, but in the end, it was nothing to really get excited about, and it makes me glad that I decided to stop and just wait to watch all the episodes at once, since if I had tried to watch this week by week after it came back to start airing after its delay, I feel like I probably would have lost it over frustration and anger. I probably would have given this a lot more of a negative review, but since I watched it all at once after waiting for it to finish airing, I definitely don't think it's the worst thing ever, just not the best. And that's why I give The Misfit of Demon King Academy Season 2 a 6 out of 10. Lots of bad things in there, and I really wish that we could have seen something better, but I'd be lying if I said there weren't some moments in here that I thought were actually pretty nice or really interesting. So yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!